In this video I'm going to continue showing the blueprints for the jump attacks. Specifically, this one will be the flying swallow move, which is basically just the forward diving move you would have seen if you watch any of the gameplay videos. You would have seen it in those videos. Okay, so just jump right into it. So last video I would have left it off with this sequence, which is the main jump attack. It's basically the jump attack that happens when you just jump straight up into the air and you do the attack. So I've covered pretty much how the jump attack is valid, and the flying swallow move works much in the same way, except it has some different checks to see whether it's valid, and I'll just show how I do that. So basically what I do, I'm just going to open this one as well. So it's kind of a chained event. So when I'm moving, so this is how I check whether I'm moving or not. I check whether my axis value is greater than or is not equal to 0. It doesn't check whether it's greater because it can go into negative values. It just checks whether it's equal to 0. So if it's not equal to 0, and that's on both up and down and left and right, or forward and backward and left and right, it's that one or that one can be true, and then I'm moving. So while I'm moving, I'm running. So that's that flag, just to check whether, so that's the flag that I mentioned in my previous video, a global flag to check whether I'm moving or not. This is basically that. So this is to check whether I'm running, and just close that one. So am I running? So this is when I jump, right? So this is my jump event. So when I jump, I do this check. Am I also running? Then do this stuff, and it's actually to be able to set, like, if I run and jump, my jump moves faster forward, and you jump lower and you jump further. When you stand still and jump, you jump higher, or when the run is invalid, so when you just push in a direction and immediately jump, you jump higher and you're still moving in that direction. But when you actually run and jump, you jump a little lower, but you jump further. So when you actually have that valid forward jump, then you can do the flying swallow move. If you happen to attack and you happen and all the other stuff lines up correctly. And then after a small time period, you can't do the flying swallow move, and that's purely a timing thing. So you can't just do it anywhere you like. You have to have that timing right to actually do the move. So if you wait too long after you've jumped, you can't do it. So that's how you get into the move. And immediately I said whether you can sheath the sword, because this move is actually gonna grab the sword, so you should be able to sheath it afterwards. And then I also said this flag is doing flying swallow, so I know when I'm doing what. So I have that on a lot of my stuff, so I know when I'm actually doing something, so I can have things happen based on that. So like I've shown before, I know whether I'm doing a jump attack, so I also know whether I'm doing the flying swallow attack. That then goes into similar kind of stuff to the jump attack. So I'll quickly go over this. Again, I'm just setting the capsule radius, so the flying swallow has a bigger radius of impact. and then reset it back afterwards. Exactly the same as the jump, it's just different values. And then also I attach it to the head so that it's right in front center, so you can just fly through a group of enemies, no problem. It doesn't go where the sword is because the animation is not very reliable for that. I want the character actually to be essentially the weapon at that point, and the animation is just secondary. And then reset that back, and so at the end of that stuff I also reset the flying swallow so that now it's not valid anymore. And then these ones, these are related. So as soon as I do the flying swallow attack, I set my collision response to enemies to ignore them, because so I can basically just fly straight through them. And that's the idea of the attack. You shouldn't get you shouldn't be getting blocked by any enemies or anything like that. You're just kind of slicing through them like butter, right? So my custom channel, and I can't remember if I've shown in previous videos how my custom channels work, but I'll just quickly show in your project settings. You go into collision and you can set up some custom channels there, and I have ninja for my player, enemy for my enemies, and weapon for my weapon. And this blocking volume here is just my own custom blocking volume, so I can change some default flags on it without messing with the default stuff that you get with the engine. So you can just use those custom channels to do very specific checks. So my weapon overlap is actually checked against. So my weapon is set to be a weapon on the weapon channel, and it can overlap with enemy channel. So my weapon can only ever touch enemies, nothing else. I can't kill myself or anything else for that matter if it's not an enemy. So I just ignore the enemies. And then this one is my rigid body pusher. So I don't actually use the player's feet or legs or whatever to push rigid bodies. I don't specifically like how that works out. It kind of throws them around too much. So I just have this, again, extra capsule that I use to be able to push rigid bodies or ragdolls and things like that. So I just disable those two so basically you just can fly through without basically touching anything. And this is where I just reset them back so that they can block this stuff again. Moving on, so this actually, again, it's one of those things I've changed which came back because I had some crashes. So set the damage amount. In this I basically just made sure that I reset my attacks, and then this is the correct rotation rate, so I set the rotation rate to 0, which just forces, so you can't just kind of change your direction in the middle of the move, obviously. And then I also set my speed multiplier, so by the time you land you're not running at full speed, and this will get reset in my global after attack reset, which I've shown in my first video. Also attach the sword, simple attach to, also shown in my first video, and set the attack delay amount, which in my previous videos I've shown. That's just so if you keep tapping the button you can't override the attacks. And then it gets into the trace, which let me just see where okay, so what the trace does is it looks for an enemy. So I'm tracing. Okay, so this still has world static in it, but again, this actually should be just tracing enemies. So I'm tracing enemies, and if I, okay, so I'll go into this one first. So if I don't find an enemy directly in front of me, the trace happens. The trace happens there. So between the character midpoint to this object. So in between those two objects, if I find an enemy, then I can do the flying swallow move. But if I don't find the enemy, this breaks off into my secondary jump attack moves. So in the previous video I've shown my normal jump attack, which is when you jump straight up and you attack. But these ones will happen when you jump, when you're running and jumping and attacking, but there isn't actually an enemy right in front of you. So this one is basically, and I have a variable called do somersault attack, because the somersault attack is when you enter somersault mode and then attack, and you have to, and then basically you kind of get out of the somersault move and into the attack move. And this one is for when you're not yet in the somersault mode, but then you attack. So it's two different animations, and I'm just going to show how that looks, so it'll immediately be clear what's happening. So now I'm running and attacking. Running and jumping means I can go into somersault mode and then attacking, and then there's that animation that's specific to that attack, and that's my most difficult animation to get right. It's kind of an awkward move to try and get out of and get into an attack motion. So I'm working on that, but that's what it looks like right now. And then the other one is if you just started moving and you do the jump attack, you're not in somersault mode yet. There we go, into somersault mode. There we go again, but they're not, right? So it's a different attack. So you don't transition from somersault into an attack, you transition from a normal jump into an attack. So that's how that gets split out. If the trace finds an enemy target, first thing I do is I get the distance between the player, which is self there obviously, distance between the player and the current enemy target. And the reason I do that, I'm just going to jump forward a little bit. The reason I do that is for my animation playback speed. So I want the animation to kind of end the same way or similar way regardless of how far you travel, because you can actually get this attack enabled at various distances. I want that animation to actually play through consistently or close to consistent. So I just get this value. It's kind of a trial and error value that I worked out, but this value represents about the maximum distance that you can hit an enemy with the flying swallow move. So I divide the distance by that value, and then I go 1 minus that the answer that I get, so I can flip it around essentially. So because I want, when you're further away, the value that you get from this division will be a smaller value from when you are closer together. And I actually need the further away value to be actually no, it's the other way. It's the other way around. It'll be a it'll be a yeah, it'll be a bigger value, and I need to flip it around so that it's a smaller value, so that when I add one, I base this on the fact that the play rate should always be bigger than 1, but it should be less when you're further away and more when you're close. So the animation plays fast when you're close, but slow when you're further away. And so that's what that kind of gives me. Sorry, getting a bit confused with my own stuff. So the attack rate there actually is also a leftover from old methods that can actually go away now that I see it there. So that's what the distance, getting the distance and doing that. For this location, it's my target for where does the player go when you do the attack. So you actually fly through the air to a specific point, and this is that point. This is what calculates that point. So you're not actually flying directly at the enemy, and the enemy is the end point. The end point is actually behind the enemy, because you want to be able to fly through the enemy and slice through him. So I get the enemy location, and I use the player rotation for this because the enemy might be looking in a different direction at that point, and I need to travel towards the enemy. So when you're doing the attack, you're looking at the enemy, so I get the player rotation for that, and then I offset that location by 200 units behind the enemy, in line with X of the current rotation of the player. So that's what that little piece does, and that creates a variable for me that's a point where the enemy is in the middle of the player and this point essentially. And then this, I just activate a little particle effect. I'm not going to really go into that. And then I play the animation, and the animation speed is based on that distance value that I calculate. So it'll play fast when I'm close and slow when I'm far away. And this timeline just does the alpha interpolation for me. It's pretty much just a linear graph. Goes from 0 to 1 linearly over 1 second. So it takes a second for this, for you to basically fly from the one point to the other. This is also actually something that I might end up tweaking based on distance. So whether you're far away or close, the move kind of feels the same speed. So right now it'll feel a bit slower when you're closer, and it'll feel faster when you're far away. But even like this, it feels pretty good. So I might do that, or I might not. And so the interpolation happens between your current location, right? That's point A, and point B is this target that I calculate beyond, behind the enemy, and just set the location directly on myself, on the player. So you're actually physically moving that thing, the player character through the, between those 2 points. This stop here is, so as soon as you do the flying swallow move, you're actually jumping, and when you do the move, you'll eventually hit the ground. And I do the same check. I use the same check that I check for jump events hitting the ground, jump attacks hitting the ground. And I just run a stop on this, so that if you hit the ground, like when it's in the middle of ramping this, then it'll stop doing it. Otherwise, what happens is this will actually have control over the positioning of the player, so you lose control on the keyboard or gamepad. So as soon as you hit the ground, you get control back because this thing stops. And that is how the flying swallow move works. So it's not super complicated, but I actually kind of went through a few trial and error things to just get it to function really nicely. Especially with regards to collision and stuff like that. I've had a few problems to deal with collision, with jumping against enemies and jumping near enemies and jumping over enemies and stuff like that. So my ultimate solution was just to disable collision altogether when this move is active, and re-enable it when it's inactive. And you know, obviously straight approaches a lot of times is the best approach. So I think that's it for this video, and I think in my very next video I will look at applying damage to the enemies, which obviously I haven't shown yet. So I've shown all my attacks, and that actually will wrap up all my attacks, right? So that's all my the first video and the previous video and this video shows all my possible attack moves at this point. So yeah, so thanks for watching this video, and I guess we'll see you in the next video.